Here we go.
Oh my goodness, it's like opposite day, right? You know what I'm saying? How cool is this? This is Aaron Locks, the CEO and founder of the National Cav Athletics, and I am the host of the Youth Sports Mastery Show here today on the Daily Parks and Rec Show. And you're looking at this going, wait, I recognize this guy. We got a special guest that we're flipping the script today. Right, Craig? We're gonna have some fun, and I get to interview you, which should be a lot of fun today, right?
Yeah, I can't wait, man. This is your idea, and as soon as I heard it, I was like, "Yep, I guess it's probably time."
Well, it's only fair, you get to grill everybody else. So guess what? And I got some deep probing questions. We're going to have a lot of fun with that. I have actually received emails and texts and messages of people that are looking for the link. So if you could share that with me, I know we're going to go ahead and run the spot and dig in, but maybe you could get that to me while we get the spot going. We can multitask, make everybody happy. So why don't you roll that? I'll send the information out on Facebook to everybody, and then we can start digging in when we get done.
All right. I'll send you the LinkedIn link, and I'm trying to think of where it runs on Facebook. But
if you give me the LinkedIn link, I can send it out.
We can go from there. Okay. All right. We'll play the promo. And
you guys in a couple minutes. Here we go.
All right.
Welcome to DPRS Media Co, the first media company built for the people behind the Parks and Rec community. We don't just cover on Parks and Rec, we elevate it, we amplify it, we honor it. At the heart of everything we do is one mission: to serve the public servants, the professionals who design, maintain, and lead the parks that shape our communities. Under the Daily Parks and Rec Show, we produce 6 powerful platforms. Leadership in Parks and Rec, a spotlight on directors, superintendents, and visionaries shaping the future of public spaces. Facility maintenance, where the boots hit the ground, a deep dive into the systems, crews, and craftsmanship that keep our parks clean, safe, and beautiful. Young Professionals Network, shining a light on the next generation of Parks and Rec. Students, interns, and mentors sharing how we build a legacy together. Youth Sports Mastery, sponsored by National Academy of Athletics. This series is for coaches, parents, and rec leaders working to make youth sports fun, fair, and meaningful again. The Rec Room, hosted by the passionate leaders of Henry County Parks and Rec. This show brings frontline energy and real-life stories from the field. And the weekly Parks and Rec Post, our official newsletter delivering stories, insights, and community wins every week. We are DPRS Media Co, LLC, a media company with a mission to uplift the professionals who serve every community, every park, every day.
And we're back. All right. Hey, like I said earlier, you may recognize the guy that is the guest today, Craig the Doorman. I am Aaron Locks. It's exciting when you get the opportunity to kind of flip the script and do things. I remember a long time ago when I was working in with the Los Angeles Lakers, and we were doing some interviews and stuff. And I remember when Magic Johnson was being interviewed, and he and Chick Hearn, who used to be they were joking around, and he said, "Let's do this." And Magic grabbed the mic, and he was doing the interview, and it was a lot of fun. I'm not saying I'm gonna be as good as Magic Johnson in this particular case, but we're gonna have some fun, right?
Yeah, I can't wait.
Yeah. So, Craig, just for those that maybe are watching this show, right? Let's give a little background. I think it's important of who's Craig. Tell everybody a little bit about you. Tell just a snippet, because I know it's a long list.
Oh my goodness. Well, let's see. I guess the only thing I'm qualified to do is a master electrician. My father and his uncle, so my great uncle, were electricians. So I kind of grew up in the trades. These were my coaches, my uncles, my parent. And so I just grew up around working class men. I got into sports kind of in high school is where I discovered my athletic ability. And some girl, Catherine Wilkinson, said, "Hey, we need guys on the cheerleading team." And I said, "I've never done this. I'm a senior." I couldn't do wrestling that year because of some other conflicts. And so tried out for the cheerleading team. And I was also a javelin thrower, did pretty good at both of those. I got a full scholarship. I got a partial scholarship to throw javelin for Louisiana Tech, but I ended up getting a full scholarship to the University of Kentucky for their national championship squad. And I became one of the best partner stunners in the country, which never dreamed that would ever happen. Things just kind of fell into place. Doors open up. You got to walk through them. Right. So got exposed to coaching and training at the highest level, at least in the sport of cheerleading. Still take those lessons with me today, and decided I wanted to be an entrepreneur. So I didn't graduate college, even though I loved engineering. I did really well, won some engineering scholarship. I mean, some competitions in civil engineering, but I just knew I wanted to start my own company. And so I decided my junior year after nationals that I'm coming back home and I'm going to start a business. And that was quite the journey to start being an entrepreneur. That's not an easy task.
Yeah.
And started 7 companies, 2 nonprofits, and ended up manufacturing LED lights for the Parks and Rec industry is how I got tied into that. Served them for 10 years through sports lighting and working with maintenance departments. And then threw all my money into Bitcoin. For those who are not in Bitcoin, what are you waiting on? Get in on that train. And made my life all about Bitcoin for 2 years and started the Daily Bitcoin podcast. And that's where I discovered my love for telling stories, media, interviewing, and all the world of interest media that we're now consuming content around.
Yeah.
And I reached back to my Parks and Rec friends who I'd been doing business with and vacationing with for over a decade and said, guys, we need to build a media company for your industry. I'm here at the National Bitcoin convention, and I'm looking at 42 media companies that are doing an amazing job telling the story of an industry born 16 years ago.
Yeah.
And we've got 100+ year old industry that has a few podcasts floating out there. And that was it.
Wow. Well, it explains a lot, the engineering brain in terms of the mindset, but those that are in the Parks and Rec space, it's funny. I was speaking with a friend of mine this morning, and she's been in the Parks and Rec space 30 years. And it's funny because she's got a little bit of an entrepreneurial mindset, but she's been stifled because she's in government. And so I can't, so it's interesting that transition, because it is nice to have the stability on some levels of the Parks and Rec and understand that component. But it's also, like she says, she's getting to a point where like she wants to sow her oats. You know what I mean? I'm like, let's go. Welcome. Come on. We got opportunity. We can do that for sure. So let me ask you a question, because I'm blown away. Over 200 episodes, right? Which is amazing in a very short period of time. And how many people say they're going to do something and whatnot. And you've not only set the bar, you don't only start going through it, but you've done it. You showed up every day. You've done the work. You brought in great people, right? And good things are happening, right? We love that. So what was the step in your mind to how you create a consistent platform? And the reason why I asked the question, not just platform in terms of what we're doing, but in general, a lot of times it's about creating something that can be repeated consistently at a high caliber. And like you said to me, sometimes it's a B, sometimes it's a C, but it's never an F. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we do that. So I'm curious in your mindset. Let's go back to your engineering days. Let's break this out there in terms of how have you set this thing in motion to be a consistent constant as you go forward with this.
Well, the lesson kind of came with me as a kid. I loved Legos, and I would play with Legos for 7 and 8 hours, and I would literally sneak into my closet, and my mom would wake me up for school, and I never went to bed. And so I guess genetically, I always like to go deep on whatever I was working on. And then I read this book called Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, and it's where he highlights that 10,000 hours is the time requirement before mastery is attained. And so if you think of yourself as a professional piano player, imagine sitting down at a piano for 8 hours a day, full time, 2,000 hours a year at a piano. That's 5 years before you reach that level, if you're able to play a piano for 8 hours a day. So that's the level of commitment. And if you're like, well, 8 hours is a long time, let me do 4, which is insane to think 4 hours a day in piano. Well, now you're at 10 years. 2 hours a day piano, you're at 20 years. So you start to understand how long it takes to master any given craft. And I was listening to David Goggins. He's an amazing, called the toughest man on earth, old Navy SEAL guy, but he runs like 100 miles, 200 miles in a given at one race. And he says that if you run 100 miles and the body and mind is formed in adversity, then after the 50-mile mark, you meet parts of yourself that you would have never met.
Mm.
The doubt, the pain, the suffering. If you're only going to do 20 miles, 30 miles, and then stop and then come and do another 20 miles, 30 miles. But once you get far enough into your practice,
Mm.
you can accomplish things that you would have never accomplished had you not immersed yourself. And of course, now everybody around you is going to call you insane. They're going to, they're going to say you're nuts.
Right.
But when you look at podcasters, the ones that record once a month or once a week, I'm recording 2 to 3 hours a day on the back of 3 or 4 hours of phone calls with Parks and Rec professionals and masters. And that's the cadence you just have to go if you're going to achieve mastery and greatness. And so I knew that I had to start a daily show. I knew it probably needed to be a couple times a day, and I need to completely immerse myself if we were going to do this and do it well.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're just kind of skirting on the surface and really not attaining any depth or mastery.
Right. Wow. The mindset, which is interesting because, the 10,000 hours, it's a real deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's also, I think, caused some challenges, in my opinion, in the youth sports space because the concept that, well, my son has got to do the 10,000 hours if he's going to get a college scholarship or get paid to play. So I better start him at 3 years old. And by the way, they can't do anything else but just that. So we get those 10,000 hours in. And again, I've mentioned this a long time about if youth sports becomes a JOB rather than a JOY, we have a problem.
That is a problem.
We're staring that right in the eyes. So how you bring passion and a smile and laughter every day to what you're doing. I see it when I'm watching you, when I'm talking to you, every time we communicate, we're laughing about something, you know what I mean? That it's a great place to be. So how could you say, because I'm thinking about this as you dive into this, what is it that you do to bring more joy every day? Because look, dude, I know you work your butt off. I know you do, right? And you're consistently doing it. But I feel like the people that bring the joy to the job place, right? Not just because they love the job and it could be a conscious effort, but talk a little bit about that, because you bring a lot of joy to what you're doing and you enjoy what you're doing and it's work, but there's people out there that sometimes would go, yeah, I don't get that. So what's your method to that? You got something on that?
Yeah, I would say it's important to have a mission that's compelling to your soul, something that's bigger than you, that's going to stretch you. I look at it as, let's say you're crossing the Atlantic Ocean for the first time because you want to go discover what's on the other side. Number one, you can't do it by yourself. Back in the day, 500 years ago, sailing was a team effort just to survive the storms that were inevitable in your journey. And so, first of all, have that mission of going to discover parts of yourself and a mission that can drive you and a team. And then pick a good team. And then at some point you have to pack and untie the ship. And you're going to find that you get so deep into the ocean. It's not like you could say a month in, you know what? I don't like this. Let's even if you decided to go back, it's a month trip back.
Yeah.
And so it's important to have that mission because my business coach told me that, she said, Craig, shout out to Cammie. She says, Craig, you need the mission more than the mission needs you. And it's that mission that drives me and that drives my team. And the mission is so challenging and so hard that I truly depend on my team. Otherwise, the mission's dead. It's not a one-man lift.
Yeah.
And so got to pick a team, got to pick a mission that drives you and that's inspiring to you. And that inspirational team and mission and vision is going to get you past those, when you're trying to acquire 10,000 hours and your team's also working on their 10,000 hours, then pick a good team and then go for it, knowing that there's going to be a series of face plants all along the way. And that's part of the process.
Yeah. As you talk about this, the word failure comes in, and it's funny because, behind me, I got Joe Montana. I did a little work with Joe, and he talked about fail fast, fail forward.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I love about you talk about is it's always about growth mindset. My mom, rest her soul, used to say all the time, she would never judge me for anything. It was just my journey. But if something didn't go right, she'd say, what's the lesson?
Yeah.
to the point where I want to kick her in the shins, right? Because like, stop, just give me the answer. But I love the fact your mindset, which is let's figure it out, right? And it's not going to be perfect. You've said this before. You're not going to allow pursuit of perfection to get in the way of progress, right? You're going to go through the process to make these things happen. But you talked about team. So I'm a big believer that you surround yourself with really smart people and you actually listen to them, right? You trust them and you put the workload, and that's the process. So when you're building a team, how does that work for you? Because a lot of people are placed on a team, right? But in your case, you got to kind of build who you wanted to do that. So what are some of how did you build your team about that?
Well, on that bookshelf behind me, there's a great book, which I recommend for anybody that's team building. It's called Top Grading. And it was given to me by one of my entrepreneurial mentors. And two things that I learned from that is, number one, you don't have enough candidates. If you're hiring, if you hire the first person for the job, you need to say, if I've got one job, I need 30 candidates. I need them to all send me a 3-minute video on themselves why they want this job. And then I need to have some type of competition where, let's just say for us, it was making video clips that had to use AI. And we had like 4 different waves in the competition. So stage 1 was make a video for Aaron Locks and his team. Here's the 20 videos they made, and make us a 2-minute promo, go. And then we'd have like, version 1s due on Wednesday, next versions on Tuesday. And then the team gets to vote on the top 3 and vote on the one they like the most and why. And then they would critique each other. So every artist had 9 critiques from their peers on their videos, and that was round 1. And then we did 4 rounds of that. So now you have the opportunity, because when you hire, and this is a rule for life, when you hire, you are guessing. When you fire, you know. And so it's important to have, and it's because firing's on the back end of working with a person. Right. So before you hire, you need to find ways, or put people on your team, find ways to work with them in a competitive environment. And this whole process came down to, I just need one.
Right.
Look at the filtration process. That's actually real world experience. And that's how you build your team. It takes time. It's a lot of work, a lot of effort. Or you can find out that I have to fire this guy 6 months in. And that's always painful. And you got to retrain people. So
no kidding.
A lot of that's in top grading.
And okay, so you get your team now. Now, Coach Riley used to talk about like a really good team is like a jazz band, right? And so they've ought to all be playing together. And then at any given moment, you get that ball and you got to improvise, you got to create, but then you got to get right back in with the synergy of the team, right? So to me, that's about creating culture. The coaches I've worked with for what we have here at the National Academy of Athletics, our talk, teach, play, and the methodology of what we do, there's a culture that's created, which is servant leadership, to lift up the kids in the communities we serve, right? And everything we do is in partnership with Parks and Recreation, municipalities, or youth sports leagues. So what would you say? Is there an easy? Because the problem I get stuck with, it is funny because I read city mission statements sometimes, and I think, what are you all doing? But I get it. But so you have a mission. So let's talk about that. What is the mission? What are you trying? I've heard it. I've seen it, but let's reiterate. What is the mission of what you're trying to accomplish with what you're doing here? You've talked a little bit about it. Let's dig in.
Yeah. And so I guess similar to trying to discover the new land, whatever you're trying to sail to America, you're just trying to find out what's over there. And no one's ever gone over there. And so in a very similar way, you have a general direction that we're going, and you have a rough understanding of what you think you might need. Right. But you also need to have a healthy understanding that you are the wrong person. The mission's way off. The people don't have near the skill set they have.
Right.
So part of the journey is, I'd say the big part of the journey is discovery. You're discovering how you're going to monetize this, what team members you totally didn't have. It's almost guesswork from top to bottom. Yeah. And when you start, now you just have to start with the understanding that you will discover the right team people. You may have a team member that's totally in the wrong seat. So now you got to put them in the right seat.
Yeah.
And then you might have somebody on the bus. This goes back to Good to Great with Jim Collins, that red
Yeah.
book over there.
Yeah. I got one. I got one
Yeah.
too.
That is, man, that's, if you're doing anything with teams or people, that's a great read. Jim Collins did an awesome job on that book, but he talks about getting the right people on the bus, getting the wrong people off the bus, and putting the right people in the right seats. And there's just lots of jockeying that goes on. And as the leader, that's what you have to do. And then you discover your mission refines itself, which is why we're big on, and I got this from Elon Musk and Steve Jobs, where they were like, launch a first product. They call it an MVP, which is minimum viable product that you're embarrassed of. And so I don't know if y'all remember, the iPhone 1 did not have the copy paste function. And look how much we use copy paste.
Right.
And Steve Jobs had no idea that we were going to spend all our time on apps.
Yeah.
Not on the phone or anything else. And so all that was discovered because he had the courage to launch with a product he was embarrassed about. Get your products into the hand, or whatever your mission, into the hands of the people you're building it for, and then ask for feedback. Like, get that feedback and treat that like gold, like you just stumbled across a pot of gold.
Right.
Because a great critique from your audience or the people you're serving is worth its weight in gold. And then just iterate as quickly as possible. So they call that a tight feedback loop. So be launch when you're embarrassed, ask for critiques from your audience, and then build version 2 as quickly as possible, then get that in their hands and get the feedback, and build version 3 as quickly as possible, and keep that feedback loop. If it's a year-long feedback loop, try to even get it down to a month between version 1 and version 2 and version 3. And that's how you, in an iterative manner, you're incrementally getting improvements from real world data with real experience, not trying to launch with a perfect product.
So when you work with, I mean, let's be honest, parks and recreations, municipalities, they move kind of slow. They're not really nimble. Let's be honest, right? There's a lot of there's red tape, there's budgets, there's that. So if we got a parks and rec professional out there that wants to make a change, I've got some ideas. I'm thinking about, obviously the outsourcing component of if you want to bring in a Lego camp, right? You call Activity Hero, right? And you talk to them, and they help you to bring in somebody that is a specialist in that space, right? Or you can, go through a million resumes yourself. For me, again, finding the right community partners, the right strategic partners can make that 10,000 hours where I don't have to learn how to build Legos, but I can find someone else that can, right? So the strategic partnerships in the youth sports space, I mean, we're in 325 cities helping to bring recreational sports back to those communities. So what do you suggest to somebody that wants to have the same mindset that, the doorman has, right? But they're in that place, they're middle management, they're in there and they want to make change, but they don't know exactly how to make those changes or how to pivot into that. But they want to have a presence, they want to have that change. How would you suggest they go about that? I mean, you've been involved in Parks and Rec long enough to know, the politics of it, the scenarios of it. Try to give them advice.
Well, I would say a lot of times we read these books on leadership, and they're coming from elite athletes and entrepreneurs. And, when you're an elite athlete, you are totally immersed in physical fitness and training and getting the right mindset. And you're constantly putting yourself under extreme pressure, where every practice you're finding your mental and physical limits. And so if you're not in those things, or if you're not like a Navy SEAL, where being in shape is a matter of life or death,
right?
And you're constantly giving opportunities to push those boundaries and stuff. And these are the people that are writing these books behind me.
Yeah.
And now let's say you're in city government, and you're not staying in shape as a way to survive, but, and so how do you apply these concepts and these frameworks in a Parks and Rec system? But I can tell you what Parks and Rec does really well, and this is a superpower of the industry.
Yeah.
That, and me and JP, Jonathan Pinn over at Henry County just did an episode on this, and this is a great example. He is an unbelievable leader, an unbelievable athlete. And Parks and Rec, if you go work for Parks and Rec on day one, they don't care that you're 21 years old and just graduated.
Right.
You're leading adults 30 years older than you. You're dealing with parents, you're dealing with kids, and there is not enough leadership around. They literally say, here's a vehicle, there's the wheel, good luck. And
Yeah.
you've never driven before. And
Yeah.
before you know it, you're driving this big old thing and you got everybody on your, and they're like asking you questions and you're like, I just got here. I'm
Yep.
figuring it out.
Right.
And so their superpower is the opportunity to just practice leadership with real people, multi-million-dollar facilities,
Yeah.
right in your hands. I mean, I interviewed somebody that he came right out of school and was given a senior center. And these are 60, 70, 80, 90-year-olds. And he's running the whole thing, the programming, the cleaning the facilities, and getting feedback from his seniors. And so I would just say lean into your strengths. That is a massive strength, is you don't have to wait to be an entrepreneur, to start a business, to get funding, to wait till you're in your 40s. Parks and Recreation allows you to practice insanely hard leadership skills on day one as a rec leader, as a coach. And a lot of other industries, you spend 8 hours a day grinding at a computer or phone calls, and it's just, you're never really getting a lot of the life skills that Parks and Rec gives you on day one. And so in that environment, you can get those changes done because you have the ability to just form yourself as a person, as a leader, from the second you step on to a full-time job in the Parks and Rec industry.
You know, it's so great. I'm looking at it from both ends, and I'm thinking of my son Mason, who is 23 years old, and you know, he's in a management position, runs the gas station for Costco in Greensboro, and he's also training, going to other locations and training. But it's interesting because of the training he got, which I'll talk about in a second. He's 23 years old, and his youngest staff member is 27. His oldest is 52, and he's managing them and he's leading them. He's also going to other gas stations and training their management of their teams. And I think a lot about it because sports, particularly in the rec space, it's magical. What you just said, and I think about this, that's why it's so important that the Parks and Recreations, we need to kick recreational sports back, man. We got to get back to that, man. We got to own that space again, and own in the sense that the kids, everybody gets to show up, everybody gets to play. And if you're a year older or a year younger, it doesn't matter. Get in and play, because you're going to learn empathy. You're going to learn teamwork. You're going to learn leadership. You're going to learn to fail and get your backside back up, right? We're going to learn all these skills that translate into real life. And where is there a better safe space than in Parks and Rec to do that, right?
Yeah. And Parks and Rec, and this is why I love what the work that you're doing, is that the real purpose of Parks and Recreation is to serve and create excellent environments for the kids, all kids, to understand their bodies, how to push them, how to be on a team, how to win, how to lose, how to learn all these drills. And it does not make, like, I wish we could just delete, just during these young years, all athletic stuff in college. Like, if we could just erase for this moment,
right.
there is zero athletic scholarships. There's none. So that we can understand that we're teaching every single child, the engineers, the nurses, and the pro athletes.
Right.
But you know, understanding your body and how to push it, and not just in one sport, which I think sometimes we have one kid, just baseball. His parents are pushing him all the way to the pros, knowing 99.999% of those children will never make it,
Right.
even to a college scholarship. But we all have bodies that we have to learn how to live with, eat healthy, push ourselves. And then the camaraderie that you take with you from these little experiences on these teams, not just on the football, basketball, baseball,
Right.
but volleyball, pickleball, yoga. I mean, Parks and Rec can offer all of that. And they're sitting on top of trillions of dollars of real estate portfolio that's built, it's there.
Yeah.
It's just really a matter of programming it and then building that momentum in the community.
And they have such an opportunity to put that out there in such an amazing way that is truly safe and engaging. Hey, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to dig a little bit more about, I want to talk a little bit more about the personal relationship with Parks and Recreation and departments and the team, what they do. So let's roll that spot. When we come out of it, we'll dig in more on Parks and Rec. See you guys.
At DPRS Media Co, we don't just create content. We elevate community through storytelling. Now, we're proud to introduce the newest addition to the family. Welcome to Youth Sports Mastery, the podcast where champions are shaped, not just on the field, but in life. Hosted by National Academy of Athletics founder Aaron Locks. Youth Sports Mastery dives deep into how youth sports can empower kids, strengthen communities, and build leaders. From coaching culture to recreation strategy, and from player development to parent impact, every episode brings game-ready insight from the people making it happen. Youth Sports Mastery goes live every Thursday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Only on the Daily Parks and Rec Show, sponsored by National Academy of Athletics. And powered by DPRS Media Co. This is where purpose meets play.
You know, I just finished that show with JP, and he was saying that the most important thing for the kids to do is to just play hard and have fun. And then I ran your promo right after, and I'm like, what are the odds?
Well, it's even get me started. Yeah. So, all right. So I'm thinking about this. By the way, every time we run the promo, it kind of cracks me because, like, you look at yourself and you look at your birthdays and you look at what's going on in life and you go, where am I going? Where have I been? And all that. Right. Yeah. So marking your journey again in the Parks and Rec space. I started when I was 7. My mom drove me to the baseball field and said, "There's your baseball coach." And then when I was 8 was the first time I started really getting involved in Parks and Recreation with the Mill Valley Parks and Recreation Department. Stuart Kessler, I remember like it was yesterday, and getting involved. There's so many opportunities to get involved in Parks and Recreation. In my belief, if you want to have a really strong community, you got a really strong Parks and Recreation Department, because that offers so much, like you said, from the littles all the way through the seniors and everything in between, right? Yeah. So here's the question for you. In your involvement, and you started in the lighting and the connection and the thread, I was just thinking about this as the promo ran. Give me one. I want to hear a Craig story. I'm going to put you on the spot on this one, of your involvement that just made you where it exceeded your expectation going through the process of whatever you were doing with Parks and Rec. Because every day I work with Parks and Rec professionals almost every single day, right? Mm-hmm. And it cracks me up because in some levels, cities, municipalities get bad names, right? But the Parks and Rec department, that's the good part of the city, right? That's the good part. But I was thinking, you know what? I wonder if you got a story you could share. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Mm-hmm. But it's just something where you've been with the city, you've done something with the city, you're working with them or a Parks and Rec professional, and something came out of it that was unexpected blessing, unexpected surprise, exceeded expectations. Because to me, I'm always looking for the what's the upside, what's the green light on those things.
Yeah, well, I never really worked for Park. I say this: the only job I've ever had in my life was when I was 15 years old and I cut grass for the Parks and Rec department of West Baton Rouge Parish. We call them parishes here in Louisiana.
Okay, yeah,
but Mr. Raggi was the Park and Rec director, and first time I ever got a paycheck, only time I got a paycheck, and just working with the grounds crew, and I felt like I was kind of part of a family, like part of a crew, a working crew, and we got to cut baseball fields, and that's kind of what I did. I stayed on one of these zero turn lawnmowers. I don't know if you remember those yellow Sony Walkmans.
Yeah,
tape in that, and I just listened to AC/DC pretty much the entire summer, kind of stuff. And I just loved it. I loved being on the fields. It was so peaceful. I loved cutting grass, and that was my summer job. And now before that, I met Mr. Raggi when probably reverse of when I was I don't know, 6 or 7. So 7 or 8 years earlier, he started a little basketball team league called Sure Shot, and there was like 10 teams. None of us knew how to play basketball except for we had a few little kids that were just amazing athletically, and we were all hoping that we would get one of them on our team, and he spaced them all out. So each of us had an ace on our team.
There you go.
But then we also had the kids that were just not athletic nerds, fat, short on the same team. And we just had a blast. And I hated that they didn't keep score because all the little boys want to keep score, and we're keeping score. We know who won, but he didn't keep score publicly, and I didn't understand the wisdom behind it at the time.
Right.
But that was just a huge impact on my life to have. And then the last story would be I played baseball, and when you pitch the ball to me, it disappears until I hear it hit the catcher's glove. I just can't trace it.
Right.
And so I'm just swinging blind. I'm swinging when I think it's going to be there, and I don't see the ball at all. And Chris Ciani was my coach, and I never hit the ball ever. But one time I nailed it and almost hit a home run. It was a line drive into left field, and I made it to second base. And he celebrated the entire team. We went out and had ice cream afterward because I hit the ball. And that was a highlight of my life, working on those little league teams.
Yeah.
And I was never going to be a basketball athlete. I was never going to be a baseball athlete. And eventually that kind of laid the foundation of me becoming a national champion cheerleader and doing gymnastics and coaching. And I coached track for 9 years, and I coached a couple championship cheerleading squads. And that all started back of my little experience into sports and athletics. And neither one of my parents are athletes. They just didn't, I don't know, back in their days, there weren't a lot of athletes and a lot of sports programming that went on.
You know, when you think about it, again, in the Parks and Rec space, particularly, the ability to just turn kids on and try things. You know, my mom did a little teaching, and she was an artist, wonderful artist, and she would come in and she would teach, and it was okay if you made a mess. It was okay if you had paint on it. It was exploration. That's what I think of Parks and Rec, is to explore, to find out what it is that you really gravitate towards, what you want to do. And in Parks and Rec, being able to have so many different classes and camps and clinics and leagues and themes and all these different areas, it seems magical to me to be able to bring that to a community. So as a Parks and Recreation professional, to be able to bring that wide variety of all of that it seems incredible. I guess my question is to you next, as I'm kind of digging into this a little bit deeper. What is your thought about Parks and Recreation in terms of how you're being of service to them right now? Because you're becoming a voice, right? A nice voice, a consistent voice. I'm trying to do the same in the youth sports space. But talk a little bit about your vision of the voice that you're lending to, from leadership to youth sports to everything in between, to these Parks and Rec professionals, districts, parishes, organizations. Right. To connect the dots.
Yeah. Well, much like Parks and Rec influenced my life, and shout out to all the Parks and Rec professionals, you don't understand the depth of the difference you're making in people's lives that will never work in Parks and Rec. Right. And what you did for me as a young child, and even being my first job and playing sports I was never going to really excel at, I carried with me all the way through my entrepreneurial endeavors. And so you're making a difference in so many people's lives, and even all the way to the senior centers. I'm sure one day when I get super old, I'll be in a senior center, back in Parks and Rec. Right. And then, let's see, this was probably my 5th company, was my manufacturing business. And I was manufacturing LED lights for heavy industry and big commercial companies, but also Parks and Rec was just one of my client segments. And when I went to my first Alabama Parks and Rec Association meeting in Orange Beach, and they meet every year at Orange Beach, and I just went out with these guys, and saw like they were partying and they were camaraderie, and it was like a family reunion.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I fell in love at that point. I fell in love with the culture and the family bonds of this industry. And they get together once or twice a year and have like a big family reunion.
Right.
They love what they do. I mean, some great people in it. And I remember coming home from that one thing and I said, I don't think I want to have any other client but Parks and Rec. Like this, this is the answer. So I slowly started to delete all my other heavy industrial, heavy commercial, and saying, we're just serving this community. And I just dove deep into that culture, and that's where I met them. And so back to how I'm serving them, you know, maybe look at it as Parks and Rec builds things, but they really don't build anything. They hire architects, engineers, contractors to build the things they want to build. They get the funding for it. They project manage it. They have the vision and mission, but they're not contractors. So they have to work with contractors to build the baseball field, and then they run and operate the baseball field. So there's a lot of things in Parks and Rec where Parks and Rec knows that they don't have a construction company and never will have a construction company that works for the city. They have maintenance crews and stuff. So they're very good at third-partying relationships, even working with nonprofits for special events. You know, they all have struggle a lot with homelessness issues, so they'll find a nonprofit that their mission is to work with homeless, and they're like, look, I got a gym. Here's some offices. Come put your nonprofit in our facilities. We'll keep the facilities going. We just want y'all to do your homeless thing.
Right.
And just run the list on all the different ways that you can work with them. And so in a very similar vein of logic, I don't know who made ESPN. I don't know who, I think I know who founded CNN. Was that Ted Turner? I forget.
You're right.
But
fact check us.
Yeah. So as I was looking at building the daily Bitcoin podcast or the daily Bitcoin show, I was, I'm like, we could make an ESPN, but what does that mean? How do you do that? And I don't know that without my entrepreneurial background for 2 decades that I would have, I don't know, had the courage or experience to go build an entire media company. And then when I looked at an industry that is serving me, that I loved, that I wanted to be a part of, I mean, believe me, making this show has had me question, should I have gone to work in Parks and Rec, 30 years ago?
Yeah, right.
But in my own way, because of my entrepreneurial endeavors, because of the Bitcoin show, because of how much I love the Parks and Rec community, I'm like, this is a way that I can at least help them tell their story and highlight what they're doing for the world, for the country, for the youth, for the elderly. And it's such an awesome untold story. And I was like, now I fell in love and went deep with Bitcoin, but as I was looking at my counterparts of media companies, I'm like, you know what? Bitcoin's got it covered. They've got so many people making unbelievable content, close friends of mine.
Right.
I'm looking over at Parks and Rec, who is making a heavy lift for society, doing fantastic jobs, and talk about probably they cornered the market on unsung heroes. So I'm like, all right, we're going to put it into this, and I'm going to build a media company for this industry to help these people tell their story.
Yeah. No, I'm again, hearing it and seeing it is so great. I think those that haven't watched a lot of different episodes, whether it's, on ours or yours, whatever, they dig in and catch those for sure. Cause there's a lot of really good stuff. And I love just even when I just clip in and just listen, kind of hear it a little bit and go, I never thought about that. Or what a great, it's just different perspective from different people. And I love the fact that whether Louisiana, California, Texas, Colorado, wherever, there's a lot of the same thread. It's the same language going through. I want to dig back to youth sports because this is the Youth Sports Mastery Show. So we probably should dig in a little bit on that end, but
yeah.
I'm thinking, you're in tune with them. I'm in tune with them. Let's talk about this. What are you hearing? What are you seeing as the challenge? Let's stay in the youth sports space for Parks and Recreation right now. What are the challenges that you think is out there? Let's identify some of those a little bit, because I've got a few. One of the ones that I hear about is the joint use agreements between schools and municipalities have changed. Back in the day, there was a lot of money flowing. There was a lot of buildings were built, and now maybe some of those 25-year agreements have dried up. So what does that look like? And they need to be renegotiated. We all know together we rise, apart we're going to fall. But
Yeah.
what are you seeing? What are you hearing out there in terms of, let's just stay in that youth sports space as it were. What are maybe some of the challenges that you're seeing out there or hearing that maybe we could, give some suggestion or touch on?
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of that old gladiator quote when Marcus Aurelius is up there saying to Maximus that there was a time when Rome was just a whisper. And if you weren't careful, it would get lost, the mission and vision of Rome. Of course, when Marcus Aurelius was there, it was truly the greatest empire ever built by man.
Right.
But you ever heard that expression, Rome wasn't built in a day?
Yeah.
So same goes for, look at every little Parks and Rec department as its own Rome, its own kingdom. Yeah. And sometimes when you get a Parks and Rec department, it is just a whisper. It's just a vision. The department literally was just built. You're now the Park and Rec director. We've never had one. Here's the grass cutter and one programmer. 3 of y'all go. No funding, no nothing. I mean, you're just building it from scratch. And every Parks and Rec department started out like that. And they all, even today, even cities as big as Dallas, now start to offer something for Down syndrome kids, handicap accessible stuff, and more inclusion. And how do we serve the elderly and the homeless and the Hispanic speakers and the poor and the wealthy and so on day one, you're just,
and the pickleball players. Don't forget the pickleball players.
That's right. It's like Rome wasn't built in a day. So just dig in and know that. And what I love about Parks and Recreation, similar to Rome, is if you don't have a long vision, Rome would have never been built on short-sighted people.
Right.
Because a Parks and Rec department, usually you're like the 5th, 6th, 10th director, and you're just picking up the torch and carrying it further down so that you can hand it to the next leader. But you're working with 50 and 100-year time frames.
Right.
So to me, that makes the best people, that makes the best communities. When you're planting trees that you'll never sit under their shade, that's what Parks and Rec people do.
Right.
They build these sports programs that from ground zero, both the facilities and the programming, and just do unbelievable work. But it takes a long time to do that. And then shoot, I was trying to think of something else that you had mentioned when it came to just serving the community. What was that? What was your part of your original question?
Well, the thought that I have, if you're trying to serve the kids, right, and trying to bring them in the youth space, and again, look, let's be honest. Youth sports has become a situation, you said it earlier, they specialize too early. They're focused on playing year round, the travel, elite, and club. And the reality is either you got the money and you're on the team, or you're really, really, really good and they want you on the team. But what about the rest of us? You know what I mean? So that's the underserved. And it's always interesting to me that the Parks and Recreations that we're blessed to work with, whether it's in Texas or Florida or California, Nevada, wherever it is, they have a mentality of somehow we're going to serve as many youth as possible, right? We're going to open up as much as possible. And don't get me wrong, competition is a good thing, but the focus, like you said, is not to get the kids a college scholarship. And remember, we had the talk with Coach Jim Perry, and he said, the job of rec is to create good citizens.
Yeah.
Right? That's where it starts.
Yeah. And then also to have fun. I've quoted him so many times by saying that if you want to know if you're doing a good job as a coach, you need to have 70% of your current little athletes, student athletes, whatever, returning from last year.
Yeah.
That means they're having such a good time. They're coming back. Right. And if they're not coming back, you got to fix that problem, because that's a problem.
Yeah. It's interesting because look, the youth sports space, the product is the coaches, because coaches are what make it happen. Now, obviously at the National Academy of Athletics, we've got a certification program or talk, teach, play program that we use for our staff. We train coaches, physical education instructors. This is what we do. And that's our secret sauce. Don't tell anybody. Right. But moving forward, when you look at what's out there, I think parent volunteers is a huge part of Parks and Recreation. They get a bad rap because some parents, let's be honest, they go over the top. But the majority of them out there, even if you're not a great coach at first, You go out there and you learn how to do it. To me, the relationship with your own child, the relationship with the kids, the relationship with the community, what a great thing to learn and be able to give back and be a part of that. And in the rec space, it really works, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say that, and I've heard many of my directors say that we're in the business of community building. And so if you take a step back and think about that phrase, we're in the business of building community building. You got to work with the community you have. And so, yeah, maybe in some fantasy angelic world, we have the world's best coaches coaching every team. Basketball, we've got the best yoga instructor, got the best pickleball, whatever, but you just don't.
Right.
You have parents that have children that want to be involved. You have to ask them. And then you have to understand that this is as much the training ground for the child as it is for the parent to coach a sport that they've never done before.
Right.
You know, nobody has coached pickleball because pickleball just came here.
Right.
There's no such thing as experts.
Yeah.
It's like saying I'm an expert in AI. You know, really, AI started 5 years ago, maybe. And so and so your little youth sports using these parents, that it is as much a classroom for the parents as it is for the child, as it is for you leading this new league. And that is the process of community building. It would be like if the Romans said, we want the most experienced person in building the Colosseum. Well, no one had built the Colosseum. We're in your virgin territory, inventing it from day one. And so if you're in the business of community building, I think that culture and concept is well understood, that you work with the 22-year-old that decided he wanted to make this his career. He's in charge of this sports center. And there's the parents. Go start asking for volunteers, and there's their kids. Start running it. And it's going to be a fun train wreck from day one. Welcome to building a community.
Well, what's interesting, and I love the building the community. So going back to Stuart Kessler, when I was 16, he invited me to coach a middle school 6th grade team. So I'm a few years older, and here you go. And what he said was interesting is that this is your practical experience to help you learn how to deal with, how to teach. And he went through this whole list of wonderful experiences that I was going to get from it. And to be honest, I still use a lot of these different factors today, and some of it's empathy, some of this, but it's all these components of kind of connecting the dots as we go forward. And that's why I think, there is no better life skill teaching tool than youth sports in my mind. That being said, a lot of what we learn is what not to do, right? Yep. But if you're a parent out there, I'll give you a little advice. One is trust the process. And you remember Dr. Herbert we had on the show a while back, and he said, look, if you want to give the time and you want to volunteer to sign up to coach recreational sports, that's fantastic. Do it, learn it, go out there and create your philosophy about the kids and do it. But if you're a parent and you're not willing to put that time in, then you need to be quiet. Right? Trust the process and allow whoever's willing to do that for your child to do that. It's insane to me. You would hope that if a child's in a classroom, you wouldn't come and start yelling at the teacher because you want them to do something different, right? Hopefully there's conversations and it goes forward. But it seems like we've lost our way a little bit. I don't want parents to not want to coach their kids. I don't want recreation departments to not want to bring in parent volunteers and bring in recreational sports because it's too much of a pain in the backside. I really want to try to guide them down the path. And the more kids are playing sports recreationally for fun, like you said, they're going to want to stay involved. That's a good thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say when you see those parents that are very, excited and passionate, and maybe even some of your troublemakers, that's a good sign that they love being there. They love, they're committed. They want to see their child succeed. They want to see what's best for their kid. Ask them to volunteer. And you just need to channel that energy. It's not that the energy's bad. It's just misplaced.
Yeah.
And so if you can ask those, passionate parents to help you build this program. Now it's not just you with the parents on the sidelines chewing you out. It's you and a team of 10 parents. I think we need to get rid of this coach and assistant coach. There should be 10 parents involved with this team, one with snacks, one with uniforms, one in charge of stretching, one in charge of warm-ups and scheduling. And now you've got 5, 10 adults working with this little 20-kid team.
Right.
And that's where I think the parents' energy is properly focused and funneled into your program. And then you can just hand them the roadmap and say, here's what I'm trying to accomplish. Where do you feel like you can fit in helping me accomplish this? And it's a team effort.
I love that. It's true community. It takes a village. I love what VJ Stanley said. Remember when he was talking about, the importance of making sure that the parents cannot make this season amazing for their kids. They can ruin it, right? They can absolutely. But if you have the right leadership with the right philosophy, and the Parks and Rec professionals are working in support of these parents, and they have a common goal, which I love the statement, and thank you, Jim Perry, right? The goal is that everybody wants to come back and play again, right? Because if they want to keep playing, I played competitive basketball until I was 52 years old. My body said, stop. You know what I mean? I'll take that. If every kid that goes through my camps wants to play whatever given sport, wants to use your body and go out there and play, hike, play sports, whatever it is, until they're 52, I think we're winning. Right. Yeah. We're winning. It's a really good way to go about it. Let me ask you a couple more questions, then we'll run up the clock here. And it goes so fast with you. It's great. Yeah. How would you say if a parent, you're a parent, you got some kids, and you want to volunteer, what would you suggest they do? Like, where do they start? I would assume when a parent signs their kid up for a Parks and Rec program, there's an opportunity to volunteer and be involved, right? Because you talked about that volunteering, giving back. Got any suggestions on that?
I just look at it like, let's just say you got a builder and he's building a cathedral, and it's a 400-year-old cathedral. It's gonna take 400 years to build. I promise you, every person in charge of that building does not mind having an extra set of hands laying another brick. Yeah. And so, anyone running a Parks and Rec or any kind of youth sports or any youth programming, it is a heavy lift, and it takes a lot of people. And I feel sorry for the coach that is trying to do it all. It's important to ask for help, and it's important that if you're a parent, to volunteer for help, and don't wait to be asked. Go up and say, hey, I want to help. What can I do to help? I see that you're putting out the cones. Can you give me the cones? I'll put out the cones. I see you picking up after. Let me at least set up the cones, put the balls out, and pick everything up. And that way you can focus more on coaching the kids, which is where the real lessons happen. Yeah. And so even if you're not volunteering as an assistant coach to get on the field and teach drills, there's so much more you can do. We had a mom that would just bring a watermelon in a ice chest and cut it up and have it ready for the kids. And honestly, I think they had more fun eating the watermelon than the entire practice. I think some of them came to practice for the watermelon.
Well, you know what? Hey, whatever their motivation is, you now know their why. That's a good. Sure, yeah. No, that's good stuff. What's coming up next in the youth sports mastery? I'm going to keep talking with people that have a passion for youth sports from all different walks of life, from Project Play to college coaches and everything in between. But what's coming up with the Daily Parks and Rec show? You got anything? Anything coming up? I'm going to throw something out that I'm going to tease on my end. But what do you got coming up?
Man, we got so much cooking up in the back. It's when we first started, we knew we were trying to cover the field in the industry of parks and recreation, which is a very broad stroke. And it wasn't long after trying to tell this story that we realized all the other standalone stories and industries within an industry. And a great example of that was urban forestry. I was not familiar with, now I love oak trees. If you live in South Louisiana, I think we would all leave if there weren't massive trees creating a shaded canopy for us. But I was able to get a master arborist on the show, and it just opened up the field of trees and on public land and how to care for them and manage them. And then I was told and realized that the urban forestry industry sits inside the Parks and Rec department. It's just another part of Parks and Recreation. And it's so different. I mean, you can run youth sports till the end of time, and that's not going to prepare you to be a master arborist. And yet y'all work in the same department.
Right.
Same thing with special events. It's special events or senior centers or aquatics. And it's so there's such like a color wheel of things when you paint the masterpiece of a healthy Parks and Rec department. And each color has its own flavor, its own people, its own mastery. And so as we got into storytelling into Parks and Recreation, there were these beautiful like reds, and we get to tell that whole story. And then over here we have like aquatics, just blue, and then we've got the senior centers and then special events. And so what we're trying to do is to create a show that tells that kind of honors the individual craftsman and mastery in all the different parts of Parks and Rec. We started with leadership. Obviously, you start at the top to understand, because they have the best understanding from top to bottom, because they all work their way.
Right.
Nobody started at Parks and Rec director. So
Right.
they work their way and earn their stripes all the way up to where they're at now. And we're able to help me understand the other stories. And then once we found facilities maintenance, youth sports mastery, young professionals, and the next ones that are coming out are going to be like urban forestry, tech and parks, where we talk about the technology in parks and recreation. And, I assume we'll have a complete whole suite that covers everything in parks and recreation, from therapeutic recreation, aquatics, you name it.
So great. I'm loving it. I'm excited that I get to be a little part of it. And I'm glad I got on the ground floor and kind of make a run. I want to be sure to thank you, your entire team, the production team, everybody, all the work they do. It's seamless. It's amazing. I will say, from the National Academy of Athletics standpoint, our franchising has expanded, and now we're serving more and more and more communities. In fact, we just opened up in Pensacola, Florida, so we're coming that way. We got some new stuff coming in Denver, so it's great. If you're
Y'all
out
are in
there,
Pensacola?
yeah, Pensacola, we just going, yeah.
I am very close friends with that community, and I lived in Pensacola for about a year. And one of my very close friends is the assistant director there. I'm so glad that y'all are working with the actual city of Pensacola.
We got a new franchisee there. She's going through the training. We're going to get the ball rolling. So what I'm going to ask everybody to do is keep paying attention to the show. We got an announcement coming up 1st of August. We've got a huge event, a huge giveaway thing that we're putting together that I think is going to be wonderful and amazing. Maybe because I thought of it. So what the heck, right? But you know what? We're so thankful to all you Parks and Rec professionals out there. Those of you that are working with kids, thank you for what you do. I know school's around the corner, and we're all going to start engaging and getting back to that. Thank a teacher, thank a teacher, thank a teacher, thank a coach, thank everybody, because we appreciate what you do. We will see you next time on the Youth Sports Mastery, where we talk everything youth sports. Thanks, Craig. Appreciate it, brother.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Welcome to DPRS Media Co, the first media company built for the people behind the Parks and Rec community. We don't just cover on Parks and Rec, we elevate it, we amplify it, we honor it. At the heart of everything we do is one mission: to serve the public servants, the professionals who design, maintain, and lead the parks that shape our communities. Under the daily Parks and Rec show, we produce 6 powerful platforms. Leadership in Parks and Rec, a spotlight on directors, superintendents, and visionaries shaping the future of public spaces. Facility maintenance, where the boots hit the ground, a deep dive into the systems, crews, and craftsmanship that keep our parks clean, safe, and beautiful. Young Professionals Network, shining a light on the next generation of Parks and Rec. Students, interns, and mentors sharing how we build a legacy together. Youth Sports Mastery, sponsored by National Academy of Athletics. This series is for coaches, parents, and rec leaders working to make youth sports fun, fair, and meaningful again. The Rec Room, hosted by the passionate leaders of Henry County Parks and Rec. This show brings frontline energy and real-life stories from the field. And the weekly Parks and Rec Post, our official newsletter delivering stories, insights, and community wins every week. We are DPRS Media Co, LLC, a media company with a mission to uplift the professionals who serve every community, every park, every day.
Welcome to Youth Sports Mastery, the show where the next generation of athletes and leaders take the spotlight. Here, we break down the training, the plays, the mindset, and the heart it takes to excel, not just in sports, but in life. Every week, you'll hear real stories from young athletes pushing their limits, coaches shaping tomorrow's champions, and parents supporting the journey from the sidelines. But this isn't only about winning games. It's about building confidence, teamwork, and leadership skills that last a lifetime. Brought to you by DPRS Media Co and powered by National Academy of Athletics, Youth Sports Mastery brings you strategies, stories, and motivation to keep pushing forward no matter what field, court, or arena you play on. So whether you're chasing your first goal, working toward a college scholarship, or just learning the fundamentals, this is your home for growth, grit, and greatness. Lace up, lock in, level up. This is Youth Sports Mastery.